All right, $1 Million Picks, Super Bowl edition, presented by FanDuel Sportsbook. We don't have House this week because he is in New Orleans. He's hanging out with Sal and with Van and all these ringer dudes, the fantasy guys, and it just hurts my feelings. He didn't have time for us. I'm going to carry on. I have a bunch of stuff I like, but I wanted to talk big picture about what I was seeing from the game because I stared at this game, I don't know, for 10 days, and I just kept thinking, Philly has more talent. Philly has more talent. Philly's better all over the place. The only things that you wouldn't give Philly the advantage are coaching, QB, pedigree in late game crunch time situations. So I thought I was going to take Philly for about a week. And then I thought about more and more. I went to the playoff gambling manifesto. I looked at all the rules. Rule number 1, first rule, beware of the looked a little too good the previous playoff round team. That was Philly going against this Washington team that already was probably lucky to make the conference title game to begin with and then had a couple big injuries, and Philly looked awesome. Rule number 5, beware of the everybody believes in us team and the nobody believes in our QB but us team. So KC's a little bit of the everybody believes in us team just because everybody's like, KC, you can't go against Mahomes. Philly's got a touch of the nobody believes in our QB but us stuff. Although, I don't know. Hurts is making $50 million a year and he gets taken high in fantasy drafts and people know he's good. So KC a little bit, Philly a little bit, but I'm not too sold on any of them. Rule number 10, when in doubt, gravitate toward one pick that would screw over the most gamblers and experts and would definitely go against the single worst gambler you know. Again, there's some KC stuff. I still feel with people, just the infrastructure, 3P, don't go against Mahomes. I still feel like when we get closer to game time, I think this line's going to move. I think it's going to move toward Philly. Right now, it's still KC -1.5. So I don't think this comes into play. There is a prop that I want to hit when we do props that I think qualifies for rule number 10. Rule number 16, take one last look at the quarterbacks and remember there's plenty of time to bet against any QB or coach, except for the Super Bowl where you don't have a lot of time. Take one last look at the quarterbacks. Mahomes, Hurts. What happens in a 3-point game with 9 minutes left and KC's down 3 and they have the ball and they're driving and you realize you bet on Philly and you didn't have Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. You just have to factor that in, and you also have to factor in rule number 17. Don't try to be a hero. Just try to win money. The hero move is to take Philly and to say, this has been the best team. When you think about it, they only had 3 losses. They were 3 plays away basically from being undefeated for the season. They're loaded everywhere. They're going to lay the smack down. And the only reason you're not going to take them is because of Mahomes and Reid. The counter is KC has just been spectacular at winning close games against teams where they do all the little things correctly and they make the little coaching decisions correctly. And they always get one little break around halftime when the other team does something stupid and maybe there's a bad special teams player. They get one fumble. They always kind of hang around and take care of business in the fourth quarter like they did with Buffalo. Mahomes is 17-3 in the playoffs career. He's 17-0 in the last 17 one-score games. That 0 means no losses. This team just takes care of business all the time, over and over again. Meanwhile, Philly, their best wins this year, Green Bay twice, Washington, they went 2-1, Baltimore, they beat by 5, and Cincy. So the record is awesome. The stats are awesome. The fact that they're 3 plays away from being undefeated is notable. Their defense has looked great. And yet, you can make the case KC has just had a much tougher schedule, a much bigger bullseye in them, and over and over again has delivered. So I was trying to think. I always try to do this for the Super Bowl. I do scenarios, best case, worst case, because I started leaning toward the Chiefs over the weekend. Best case scenario, comparing the Chiefs to Brady and the Pats, because I think there's a lot of similarities, including like the infrastructure, the coach, the experience in big games, all the veterans you have, just the ability to just pull out these close games over and over again. What Brady's Super Bowl win would this be like for Mahomes? And I settled on Patriots 28, Seattle 24. Ironically, 10-year anniversary of that game this week. Really great YouTube clip that the Patriots put up with all this extended audio and video stuff from the game. I watched the whole thing. I made my dad watch it. I think it's probably my favorite Patriots win of all the wins. It has the Malcolm Butler game. Anyway, they're down 10. They win the game by 4, 28-24. It was a pick 'em line, so similar to this. 47 for the over-under, pretty close to this. It was a game that had 10 punts, 3 turnovers, 7 touchdowns, and a field goal. So 10 possessions on each side. That feels a little similar to what I think the game's going to go on Sunday. Patriots couldn't really run the ball. 21 for 57 running it, but 37 for 50 for 328 passing. That feels like what's going to happen in this game for them. I don't think they're going to be able to run the ball that well against the Eagles, and I think the Eagles are going to try to push them to do short, medium passes. Just keep trying to move the ball downfield, and eventually we're either going to get a sack or a tip, or we'll break up a play, something. But just take your time going down the field. Seattle on the other side in that game, 29 for 162 for the run, which kind of feels like what might happen with Barkley. They were 12 for 21 passing for 247. That feels in the ballpark of what usually happens within a Hurts-Eagles game. The Pats were 8 for 13 on third down. Big time of possession for them, 33-46, because it was a lot of those short, medium completions that just kept the clock moving. Brady ended up 37 for 50 for 328. So close game. They had to throw the ball a lot because they weren't able to run it. And then they took care of business down the stretch. And then Malcolm Butler came up with the most famous play in the history of the Super Bowl. I think that if the Chiefs win, I don't think it's a big win. I don't think they win by 10 plus. I think the game is tight in the fourth quarter and they pull it out. All right. What would be the worst version of the game for the Chiefs? What bad Mahomes loss would this be like? That's obvious. That's Bucks 31, Chiefs 9. That was the Super Bowl result. KC favored by 3. They ran the ball a little bit in that game, 17 for 107, 26 for 49 passing. Mahomes was okay, but he had a couple turnovers. And then Tampa ran the ball on them, 33 for 145. Only 8 incompletions for Brady, no turnovers. Took a big lead, held them off, took over the game in the second half with their pass rush, and KC just couldn't do anything, 9 points. I'm a little scared of that result for this. I almost feel like if you're taking the Eagles, you got to think they're winning by 10 plus. They're not, I don't think winning a close game against Mahomes and the Chiefs in the fourth quarter, which makes me think if you're taking the Eagles, just take the -9.5 at plus 350 and get some juice on it and root for a game like that Bucks game, the 31-9 game. I am looking at this as a Chiefs win and a nail biter of a game. When you break down everything, KC's run versus Philly's run defense, advantage Philly, not great. KC short passive versus Philly's short defense, even. Explosive versus explosive D, Philly. Philly run versus KC's run defense, slight advantage to Philly. Philly short pass versus KC's short defense, slight advantage to Philly. And then Philly deep passing versus KC's deep pass defense. That's an advantage to Philly because KC gives up explosive plays every game. They give up at least one big one. So all of the unit versus unit advantages are toward Philly. And yet the QB, you're giving them the advantage. The coach, you're giving KC the advantage. So there's 2 for KC and then the late game. And then there's all the stats that came out this week about Hurts, how he does against pressure and the blitz. The Chiefs are going to pressure him. Hurts against Spags almost has to be its own matchup that you have to think about. Then you think like 132 Mahomes starts. He's only lost by 8+ points 5 times. So if you think the Eagles are going to win this game and you don't think they're going to win a close game, that means it's a blowout, which means it's something that basically happens 1 out of every 26 Chiefs games. So they'd really have to kick ass. There's some advantages for the Eagles. Number 2 in limiting explosive plays, according to Shil Kapadia. Really good tackling team. And then they have that recipe that used to work against Brady in the past. And I think the Eagles have it where you just rush to 4. They're constantly pushing the pocket. And then you have the other 7 guys can basically be doing all kinds of, are they blitzing? Are they bouncing back? Are they pretending to blitz and then blitzing? That's what used to frustrate Mahomes. So Brady. So I feel like there's some recipe stuff here, but ultimately I just can't take Hurts over Mahomes, and I can't take Sirianni against Reed. And if anything has taught us about this Chiefs team over the years, they just benefit from dumb shit from the other teams, or just the play you shouldn't have made, the moment that you can't believe this happened. And it always works out for them. I'm not going to talk about the refs. So here's what I'm doing. For $1 million picks, We lost $211,000 last week. We are still up $1.071 million for the season. I'm going to try to double it. We're going to bet $500K in the Chiefs minus 1.5. We're going to bet a $250K parlay. Listen to this one. Eagles plus 8.5. Mahomes 200 plus passing yards under 60.5 points. So it's a little bit of a hedge against that Chiefs minus 1.5 because I think the game's going to be close, and I'm going to try to middle it with that parlay. And that parlay is dead even on FanDuel. So doing those two. And then $50K on the following Super Bowl props. Ready? Hurts anytime touchdown minus 115. At some point, the tush push is happening near the goal line. That's just the way this goes. Mahomes over 5.5 carries minus 128. You go back, you look at all the Super Bowl. Sal and I talked about this on the Super Bowl props. He uses his legs in every big game. And even if he doesn't get to 5.5 carries, it's 5 instead of 5.5. So the odds are in your favor on this, especially if they're going to rush 4 and he's going to be able to scramble around and buy himself some time. Think about the Eagles defense. If they get a little tired in the fourth quarter, who knows? I just think he gets the 6 carries. I like that a little more than the yards because the yards, if they had the lead, the kneel down, start cutting in the yard total. Not doing that. Mahomes over 11.5 yards for biggest rush, taking that. I'm also taking Hurts over 11.5 yards for his biggest rush. Figure one of those guys is rushing for 12 yards. Maybe hit both. Worst case scenario, you split them. Chris Jones sack plus 136. We talked about this on Sunday. Line pushes forward. Hurts holds the ball, holds it too long, and then all of a sudden Jones gets him. Both teams get a 4th down conversion minus 124. I think there's probably going to be a point in this game where both teams have to get a little bit aggressive because they're going to be worried about what happens if the other team gets the ball back. So even 4th and 1s, 4th and 2s, I just think both teams are getting a 4th down conversion. And then we have a boost on FanDuel that I'm just going to jump on for $50K. KC wins, Mahomes over 225 yards of passing, which you can use the profit boost token and go nuts on. And then I have some small 25K Super Bowl props. Mahomes 40 plus rush yards is plus 180. I like that one because if I'm betting on his rush over, I might as well just go for it and think he's going to go like 8 for 45, whatever. Eagles first half, Eagles to win the first half, Chiefs to win the game, plus 750. This is the Cousin Sal special. Could see it happening. So we're putting 25K on it. I think this is going to be a tight game. I do not think the Chiefs run away with this by any means, and I could totally see the Eagles winning in the first half. So we'll flyer on that. And last but not least, going back to the manifesto, no Barkley touchdown is plus 150. And at FanDuel, they were saying, I heard through the grapevine, this is the least bet Super Bowl prop. So you want to have the prop that everyone is betting the other side on. Plus 150, we're putting 25K on that. And those are the $1 Million Picks, Super Bowl edition. Don't forget, Sunday night, me and Cousin Sal, at some point after the Super Bowl ends, we will be going full tilt on everything that happened in the game. We're not going live on YouTube, but it will be on this podcast. We'll get the video up as fast as possible on YouTube. So there you go.